The Hearst family has been wealthy for around 150 years. Their most successful member, William Randolph Hearst, inspired Orson Welles' Citizen Kane, a film made in 1941 depicting a ruthless media mogul named Charles Foster Kane. Like his cinematic counterpart, William Hearst created the largest newspaper publishing company in history. His children inherited his wealth and influence during the 50s when William died at 88 years old. After his passing, his son Randolph had a daughter named Patricia, but everybody called her Patty. Little Patty had no idea how crazy the rest of her life would get. Patty, a nickname she despised growing up, spent her childhood in San Francisco Bay Area in one of the wealthiest communities in America. This was a community of capitalists and their children, often intending to pass their wealth to subsequent generations. Meanwhile, a movement was developing outside of the community gates. History remembers it as the Counterculture Revolution, a sweeping movement that encapsulated young people like Hearst into challenging the beliefs of their parents, which she did. Patty was expected to be a Hearst at home, but outside of her parents' influence, she was liberal, rebelling against the system her family helped create. Put another way, Hearst grew up in two different worlds. One was the good old hereditary American capitalism. The other preached that those things were wrong and should be cleansed from society. It was old money versus new age ideas. And the new ideas were winning, at least in Hearst's mind. When she was a teenager during the late 60s and early 70s, Patty Hearst enjoyed smoking pot, voting for liberal politicians, and tripping out on LSD. She often snuck out to escape her safe and secure life for concerts on the rougher sides of town. She outright rejected the music of her neighbor Bing Crosby for the rebellious music of the day, rock and roll, or the early version of it. Hearst rejected the people living in her house and the legacy they strive to protect and preserve every day. Randolph tried sending Patty to a Catholic school, the upscale type with dark paneled walls and strict nuns. Young Patty behaved so badly that the school created so-called Patty rules to keep the hippie in line. However, Hearst refused to go along with punishments, forcing her parents to reluctantly send her to a secular school. The move led Hearst to meet a young math tutor named Stephen Weed. And yes, that's his real name. He would change Hearst's life forever and force Randolph to deal with a potential blow to his family's legacy. Randolph Hearst wanted two things for his daughter: to receive an education, no matter the cost, and for her not to bring down the family's reputation. So, Randolph cut her a deal when she threatened to elope with her 25-year-old math tutor at the age of 18. He agreed to pay for her and Weed's apartment if Patty attended Cal Berkeley. Young Hearst agreed, but only because she wanted to be with Weed. Hearst met him during her junior year of high school while Weed was tutoring her in math. The two apparently fell for each other. Weed was everything her family wasn't: a regular American Joe. He was also very left-wing, like many people his age during the late 60s. Weed's ideas and his handsome young face captivated Hearst, leading to a separation from her family. Hearst got what she wanted. On February 4th, 1974, Hearst was looking forward to her wedding in June and starting a new life as Mrs. Weed until someone knocked on her front door around 9 o'clock at night. Hearst and Weed were watching TV in the living room and weren't expecting any guests this late. So they answered the door to see who it was and found a group they didn't know. The mystery group told them they'd hit a car in the parking lot downstairs and needed to use their phone. The people at the door were Donald DeFreeze, Nancy Ling Perry, and Willie Wolfe. Perry was the one who knocked on the door. Hearst and Weed didn't see a car downstairs when she stepped away from the front door. Instead, they saw two men, DeFreeze and Wolfe. Yes, those are their real names too. The two men burst inside with black rags. They took the couple down, gagged their mouths shut, clubbed Weed with a wine bottle, and dragged Hearst out of the house. She pleaded with them to stop. Her neighbor recalls hearing Hearst yell moments before her mouth was stuffed with a ball of fabric. "Please, no, not me. Except Patty is exactly who they wanted." The three kidnappers tossed Hearst into the trunk of their car and drove off. They'd been planning this operation for weeks. When Hearst started attending Berkeley, the trio assigned their friend to get a job at the university, allowing her access to all of the school records, including student addresses. Once they knew where Hearst lived, they devised a simple plan to kidnap her. But why? The trio belonged to an army, the Symbionese Liberation Army, or the SLA to be exact. Not that long ago, two of their fellow Liberation Army members had been jailed for taking the life of a school administrator, and someone of her stature might serve as a valuable bargaining chip to exchange for their release. However, the SLA leaders had other plans. The world watched and waited for 4 days, yet heard nothing from Patty Hearst. All they knew was that the heiress was gone, violently and mysteriously taken from her home by 3 unknown kidnappers. Then, the SLA dropped off a special recording at a local Berkeley radio station. The recording revealed to authorities the Hearst family and the American media who was holding Patty hostage. Soon, the black 7-headed cobra was everywhere, the cobra being the SLA's symbol. Before '74, the group gained minor notoriety for firing cyanide-infused projectiles into a local school superintendent. Since then, the SLA resorted to committing lesser crimes and slowly began fading away as their socio-political revolution lost steam going into the 70s. That is, until the SLA kidnapped Hearst. Before that, the SLA had been an obscure, run-of-the-mill liberal revolutionary organization. With Hearst in custody, the SLA had the eyes of America on them, and the Hearst family resources at their disposal. The Hearst family heard their message loud and clear, primarily because it was delivered by their daughter, who told her parents about her current situation. She was okay, and only suffered from a few scrapes and bruises. Thankfully, the kidnappers were kind enough to wash and bandage them. However, she was surrounded by a whole combat unit armed with automatic weapons who had no intention of letting her go. The General Field Marshal of the Army, known as Sink, also had a message for the Hearsts, though he was more straightforward. He told the Hearsts that whatever happens to their daughter was their responsibility and the responsibility of the authorities they represent. Field Marshal Sink held many of the same ideals Hearst believed in, but with a more potent amount of conviction. During the first couple months of Patty's capture, Sink tried his hardest to make sure the Hearst family paid for their oppressive past. The SLA started by asking Randolph Hearst to fork out $400 million worth of food to feed every poor person in the Bay Area for a couple days. Randolph couldn't come up with the $400 million, so instead he donated $2 million to a disorganized free-for-all food drive that ended in disaster. On top of that, the SLA refused to free Patty. While Randolph was trying to make a deal with the SLA, the 7-headed cobra was trying to show, or at least make it appear, that Hearst was no longer a captive. In April 1974, 2 months after getting kidnapped, Hearst released another recording. This one showed a surprising change of tune from Patty. She revealed she'd been given a choice. She could either be released in a safe area or join SLA and fight for her freedom and the freedom of all oppressed people. In the recording, Hearst chose to stay and join the SLA. Hearst renamed herself to solidify her public dedication to the SLA. According to another recording, she was given the name TANIA, after a comrade who fought alongside Ernesto Che Guevara in Bolivia. In addition to her new name, Hearst, now TANIA, beat the skeptics to the punch and made it clear she wasn't doing this due to brainwashing or torture, but of her own free will. These affirmations would come back to bite her later on. Patty made her SLA debut on April 15th at a bank in the Sunset District of San Francisco. She, along with another Army member, stormed into the bank with assault weapons at their hips. Patty's hair looked dark and curly in the black and white footage. It's the first time anyone who wasn't an SLA member had seen Patty publicly. In her first public appearance since being kidnapped in February, Tanya, not Patty, pointed her weapon at the people inside and ordered them up against the wall. 2 unsuspecting men walked into the bank during her triumphant return to society. Patty and her associate turned and pointed their guns towards the front door. They fired several wild shots into the 2 men, but thankfully weren't accurate enough to do fatal damage. After grabbing the money, Patty and company fled to the getaway car and sped off to their hideout. After the bank robbery, Patty continued to participate in SLA activities. According to evidence compiled by authorities, the heiress helped the SLA construct bombs at their hideout, abduct people, and steal their cars. The bombs Hearst made were later thrown at police during a siege on one of SLA's hideouts. Police bullets took out several members, and some assume Patty was among the deceased, which, by this point, would not have saddened some people. Once the media reported on the bank robbery and other crimes, investigators and news questioned Patty's innocence. Her story had 2 narratives. First, explained Patty's terroristic behavior due to Stockholm Syndrome. Others, like Attorney General William B. Saxby, believed Patty committed these acts because she wanted to, not due to a syndrome or blackmail. No one knew for sure, not until Patty was arrested in 1975. The authorities issued an arrest warrant for Patty after the deadly shootout. Ironically, one of the many felonies police charged her with was kidnapping. 2 counts to be exact. A year and a half later, an army of San Francisco police detectives and FBI agents found Patty in an SLA apartment with another member named Wendy Yoshimura. They cuffed the 2 SLA members and took them into police custody. While filling out her booking papers, Patty listed her occupation as urban guerrilla. That was for the police. For the world, Patty instructed her attorney to release a public statement. Her statement mentioned how she was smiling and felt free and strong. She wanted to send her greetings and love to all her brothers and sisters out there. We assume Patty was referring to her fellow Army members and anyone else who identified with the liberation movement. However, when the charges were filed, the media heiress changed her tune. A few meetings with her attorney brought Patty back down to reality. That reality being, the DA office planned on going after her like there was no tomorrow. Suppose Patty continued expressing positive sentiments towards her former captors. In that case, she might as well plead guilty to 2 counts of kidnapping, 2 counts of grand theft auto, and a couple of charges for bank robbery. So her team of attorneys, which included F. Lee Bailey, who decades later would help on O.J. Simpson's famous Dream Team, devised a strategy, the only strategy available to them. Prove that the SLA forced TANIA into committing all those crimes. It was as if she had removed her TANIA mask and became good old Patty again. At least that's what the defense team wanted the jury to think. However, once the trial began, some problems arose, particularly with Bailey's defense strategy. The judge allowed the prosecutors to present evidence to the jury, such as psychiatrist testimonies and evidence suggesting that Patty willingly participated in the SLA. In many cases, Patty had to sit there and listen to experts give testimonies against her, especially psychiatrists who essentially admitted that, in their professional opinion, Patty did not suffer from Stockholm Syndrome. But the prosecutors went a bit further. They questioned why she had revolutionary books about making weapons and explosives in her apartment. They also asked why she never tried to escape, despite every opportunity. On March 20th, 1976, Patty was found guilty of bank robbery, the only crime they could prove she committed without a shadow of a doubt. On sentencing day, Patty received 7 years in prison. Patty's time behind bars was rough. Most of her time in prison was spent in solitary confinement, though not due to bad behavior, but because the warden feared what other prisoners might do to her. Nevertheless, Patty still nearly died behind bars. Just days before she was set to testify against several SLA leaders in court, Patty's lung collapsed. She was immediately taken to a hospital for emergency surgery. The surgery went well, but caused Patty to miss her trip to court. Testifying against the SLA was her ticket to a shorter sentence. Fortunately for Patty, it pays to be rich. Despite being found guilty in court, the court of public opinion thought Patty was innocent. Even stars like John Wayne called for Patty to be pardoned. Sure enough, then President Jimmy Carter commuted Patty's sentence to probation instead of prison. A decade later, President Bill Clinton fully pardoned Patty. Patty's post-pardon life has been surprisingly positive. Patty wrote and published a memoir detailing her time with the SLA during her probation. After her pardon, she took up acting and appeared in several movies and TV shows like Frasier. Patty was not afraid to appear in the public eye. She allowed herself to be interviewed on several occasions, often spending most of it defending herself from past accusations by San Francisco prosecutors, accusations she will have to live with for the rest of her life. Click here to watch one of these next videos. And let us know in the comment section if you think Patty knew what she was doing or not.